The Matthew Dark Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, praise God and welcome in. This is the Matthew Dark Show. And remember, hit subscribe everywhere you get your shows. Never miss an episode. An important episode today. I think when you hear the word cancer, it's automatic fear, worst case scenario. It doesn't matter man, woman, degree, stage of that cancer. It's a scary word. We've made it that way in America. But then I think what's even scarier is the unknown. What is my susceptibility? What is my potential risk in this? And so this is an interesting case because it's not going to be on most people's radar, but it's breast cancer in men. And we actually have the leading advocate for this. It affects about 1% of the breast cancer cases go to biological males, but we're going to hear a lot more about that. Our guest is Jake Messier. Now, the website and all the socials, the guy with stage 4 breast cancer, right? That's
Correct.
where you can find him and everything. I want to welcome you in, sir, and thank you so much for doing this. What an interesting topic and your struggle, your battle, and then how you emerged as an advocate. I guess
Sure.
if you could just take us up to that time, you're living your life, you're going along, you don't have breast cancer on your mind as a man, you're thinking, here I go. Pick it up from there. What was it like? And then that moment to bring us to here. Go ahead, sir, and thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. I was diagnosed in September of 23. And if you go back 6 months before that, that's actually where this story starts, which is me putting on some deodorant, me feeling a lump, me saying literally out loud, oh, that's weird. And then me going on with my day, right? And that progressed over several months, right? Until maybe month 4 when I was coming up on a primary care visit anyway. And I was like, well, I think I need to bring this up because this hasn't gone away. It's not painful per se. I mean, if I touch it a bunch, maybe it's painful, but it's not painful.
Yep.
So I went to my doctor and my primary care physician was like, he listed off about 10 things that it could be. And none of them were breast cancer because it wasn't even in his mind. But in the back of his mind, he was like, well, let's send you for a mammogram anyway. And I was like, a mammogram? What are you talking about? So that was the beginning of all this. And so I go in to see my mammogram and they try to get as much tissue into the mammogram machine as they can. And they do it. And I'm sitting there and that's my first scan I've ever had. I'm an old hat now. I've been in this for 3 years, right? I'm an old hat now. But that was my first scan. So I'm looking at it and just trying to figure out what I'm even looking at. And there's a nurse sitting next to me, and she has been in a million mammograms, right? She has seen clean ones, she's seen scary ones, she's seen everything. She's not allowed to tell me what it is because the doctor has to come in and tell me. But she puts her hand on my hand and she goes, "Are you okay?" And at that point, I was like, "Wait, hold on. Am I supposed to be reading something here that I'm not?" And I said, "I don't know." And I said, "Can you tell me?" And she goes, "I can't tell you." I said, "Okay." She goes, "But what I can tell you is that your life is going to start moving incredibly fast and incredibly slow at the exact same time." And I can tell you that nothing has been more to the point. I mean, the past 2.5 years has felt like, 4 days. And the past 2.5 years has felt like 40 years, right? It's crazy how the time slows down and expands all at the same time. So I start this journey with stage 2 stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma. That's my official diagnosis. Which I used to say, I was stage 2 and then I went to stage 3 and I went to stage 4. And now I understand that that's not how it works, right? As I've progressed in this journey, I was probably misdiagnosed stage 2 and probably should have been diagnosed stage 3. And then because of the delays in my own personal delays, but also the delays in this journey, which I'll get into in a minute, which is male breast cancer is not a researched or studied or really known thing. The delays ended up, me going into stage 4, which, as we know, is non-curable. It is certainly treatable, but it is non-curable, right? Unless I get hit by a bus or struck by lightning or something else, right? This is the thing that's going to take me out. And so, you have to sort of come to peace with that. You have to come to grips with your own mortality, with what's going on around you. And, there's this, when you're diagnosed with cancer, the world sort of collapses anyway, right? That, that's sort of a normal thing in cancer. When you have the added layer of a rare cancer, and in this case, a predominantly gender specific cancer, right? Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of other emotions and stuff that comes into it. I mean, I went through a 6-month period of extreme depression, of emasculation. I have this women's disease. It didn't help that every waiting room I went into was pink and flowers, right? It didn't help that every piece of literature I was given had a 68-year-old, Caucasian white woman on the front of it, right? None of this was printed for me. None of this looked like me. None of this was about me, right? And I was like, I don't understand that. As I started to go down this path, right, of, well, I went through chemo, and then I went through a mastectomy, which led to 2 other surgeries and then radiation. But as I went through the sort of typical cancer path and down that journey, cancer by itself is extremely isolating. Right. Cancer in this space is extremely isolating. You mentioned at the top of the show, it's 1% of all breast cancer cases. To break that down even further, it's 1 in 8 women are going to experience breast cancer in their lifetime, right? That's a big, scary number. 1 in 8. I mean, I know way more than 8 women in my life, and one of them is going to end up with breast cancer, right? And that's a hard, scary fact. Men are 1 in 728. It's a much rarer disease. 99% of all breast cancer cases are women, 1% are men. And when you start talking about the metastatic route, right, the worst stages 1 through 3 are, the curable ones, and then you get to stage 4, which is incurable. Then you're talking about 1 in 7,200, 1 in almost 7,300 men. Jeez. And so it's isolating. It's I'm a veteran. I was a Marine, and so right. I was an entrepreneur. I built my business. I was doing this man's man. All these things, right? And all of a sudden, I come down with breast cancer. What are you talking about? And so, what I really leaned on during this time period was the fact that I had spent 30 years of my professional career, starting in the Marine Corps, right? In the Marine Corps, I was a combat correspondent, public affairs. I was, a print journalist, a broadcast journalist, those kinds of roles, right? Yeah. And those continued on after I served for 10 years. I did 20 years in Boston communications, in various roles, mostly in the nonprofit space. But, all the way up to VP of marketing and VP of communications. And then I started my own agency, and for 7 years, we were the largest nonprofit marketing agency in New England. And so I have all these things going for me, right? In 2021, I lose 120 pounds by putting less food in my face and just walking. I didn't take anything. I just literally, everybody else was walking during COVID, and I was like, well, me too. And I ended up losing 120 pounds. Wow. I went through every rock in my soul, and I flipped it over. And I was like, these are the people that I owe apologies to. From going back to, childhood and teens, I went out and I made sure that I was the best person that I could possibly be, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all the things. Huh. And so I fix myself, right? When I'm 50, 51, 52 years old, and then all of a sudden I get breast cancer. And I tell this story only because I think most people, when they get diagnosed, that's when they have their "what does it all mean" moment, right? I think that's when they start that journey. I had already been in that for 2 years, constant yoga, constant meditation, constant, taking care of myself and being, very, very mindful of myself and self-analysis, almost to a fault, right? Of where is my fault in these situations and how do I make myself a better human being and all of these things. So when I get to September of 23 and I'm, rocking and rolling, all of a sudden this derails. But I leaned back on this sort of mantra of being a good human, being being the best version of myself that I could be. And I knew that the best version of myself that I could be was not the person that was wallowing in self-pity and and fear and the normal things that come with cancer, but also the layered on all the stuff that comes with it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's numbers out there that talk about 30% of men in breast cancer don't end up going to treatment or staying in treatment because of how they feel when they are there. Like I said, everything is, you have to be okay with living in this pink world. You just have
Right.
to be. And if you're not, then it's very, very difficult. When I came out of my mastectomy, right, the OR nurses, they were trying to be kind to me, right? And I try to give them all the credit here. They were trying to be kind to me, but they were like, hey, so we didn't put a surgical bind on you, which is the sort of abdominal thing that keeps everything in place when you get abdominal surgery. We didn't put an abdominal bind on you because the only ones we had in the OR were pink and flowers. And I was like, do you think I'm going to turn down a medical device? I'm like, of course, put it on me. Of course. But that's the mentality that is pervasive in this. I just met the first guy. I've met thousands of women with breast cancer. I go to conferences and there's 800 women and me, right? Or I go to a training and there's 100 women and me, which is, and I just met the first guy with breast cancer in person after 2+ years. We finally met because it's just that rare. Yeah. Dana-Farber's got 30 guys. Dana-Farber's where I go in Boston. That is the only place in the world that has a male breast cancer department. The only one. And other places have maybe a male breast cancer department that only does clinical, but they do clinic and research at Dana-Farber, right? So my oncologist happens to be the lead guy, the head guy of the male breast cancer department at Dana-Farber. And he tells me all the time, I don't know anything about male breast cancer, Jake. I don't know anything about it because there has never in the history of breast cancer of the, billions, $20+ billion spent on breast cancer research. There has never been any money spent on the differences between male and female breast cancer ever in the history of all this. So a lot of that goes, I know this is a conversation and not just me talking, but a lot of that goes into what you just said. There's so much that goes into the disease that's more than just having cancer, right? There's all of this extra stuff that's piled on top of it. There can be gender specific diseases like ovarian cancer, right? I'm not going to get ovarian cancer in the same way that my wife is not going to get prostate cancer, right? But there are these diseases that it doesn't matter what your gender is. Human mammals have breast tissue, right? That's, there's nothing emasculating about that statement, right? If you're a human being, you have breast tissue, and that breast tissue can be susceptible to cancer. And that's what we're trying to do is get out there and just make it so that when I go out there and say, hey, guys can get breast cancer too, the immediate response isn't like, wait, what? Like that's what we're trying to get over. We are 70 years behind where women are. Women in the 1950s were talking about, hey, breast cancer's a thing. And they were just on their awareness campaigns. And luckily we have a blueprint of that pink world to map ourselves into. But yeah, it's a hard place to be if you're not ready to be in it. And that's where, it's hard anyway, just dealing with cancer, but it's a hard place to be if you don't feel like you even fit among the community of cancer that you're supposed to fit in.
It's well said because it's like, I've got cancer. I'm out of the gate now, different from the others in this scary new world. Now I'm in this scary new world without a support or a fellowship base to really reach and tap into. So what you're doing is very critical because you described men are going to get this diagnosis and say, forget this, I'm out. And it's going to take them out, right? I mean, it's not going to grow slower because you're a strong man. Cancer's a machine. Are they describing to you like the pathology, the treatment, the prevention? All of that is going to be different for a man. And they really do need to customize the care, the treatment to men, or are they able to take at least what we've done on women and at least present that as, like you decide, okay, this is a lump. This should be taken action right away. Even if you're a man, we let that thing grow for 2 years, we may not get you back. Are you
Mm-hmm.
seeing advancement there, how we deal with this on a male perspective?
So I am treated both with my cancer drugs, right? The daily medications that I take, and in all aspects of my care, I am treated solely based on women biology,
Okay.
and I am based on women data,
Okay.
because we're not even included in the studies.
Jeez.
We are such a statistical anomaly that when you
Right.
start integrating these small pools into a large database, you end up with statistical anomalies, and so they'd rather not have us in it
Yeah.
than have us throw off all the data, right? So I get that to a point. At the same time, it's not doing anything good. I'm treated, what I'm currently on right now, is what's called endocrine therapy, and that is tamping down the estrogen in my body. I have ER positive breast cancer. Every person has testosterone and estrogen in their body, right? And I don't have any more estrogen than anybody else in my body. What they're trying to do is these two drugs, they block the estrogen receptors in my body. So therefore, the thought is less estrogen in my body, less chance of breast cancer coming back, right? That's the whole purpose. Doesn't matter, women start taking these drugs, and they go into instant medical menopause. Like, it doesn't matter if you're 35, it doesn't matter if you're 70 and not going, it doesn't matter where you're at. They go into immediate medical menopause. And it's the same thing for us guys. Like, we get this shock to the system where we're having hot flashes and everything else. I'm like,
Wow. Wow.
it's crazy. Yes, I'm grateful that breast cancer as a whole, right, this big pink world that we live in, is the most researched, the most funded, the most well known. I mean, the pink ribbon started
Yes.
off all the ribbons, right? The Komen pink ribbon marketing campaign is one of the most successful in the history of mankind, right up there with Coke and Pepsi and Ford.
Yeah.
I mean, the pink ribbon campaign is massive, but it's pretty exclusive unless you fit the parameters that sort of mainstream breast cancer want you to fit into, right? If you're a guy, or if you're a black woman, or if you're an Asian woman, it doesn't fit into the mold that they put on their brochures. It doesn't fit into all these other things, and so it's very difficult. I'm not the only one that experiences, true, lack of inclusion, lack of diversity in breast cancer.
Sure.
It's been long recorded about women, black women, but case in point, people trying to do the right thing make bad decisions every once in a while. I'm a part of dozens of online groups, right? I know guys all over the country as part of these online groups. I wanted to join a local one. I live in Western Massachusetts, right in the Berkshires, and I wanted to join a local one just so I could, rather than sitting on a Zoom, right? I can go sit in the room and commiserate with people that are going through the same thing that I am, right?
Yes.
And I called this local cancer organization, and I said, look, you have a breast cancer group and a metastatic breast cancer group, which is sort of funny, but here's the story on that. When you go to a breast cancer group, or really any cancer group, this is the funny thing. When you go to any cancer group, stages 1, 2, and 3 do not want the stage 4 people there, because we represent their worst fears, right? They're all in this framework where they're going to be cured. And when stage 4 comes rolling and complaining about their lives, they're like, we represent the scariest, worst parts. So a lot of times we're not allowed to be part of the other support groups, right? So metastatic is always separated, right? Which is, I get it to a point. So I called this organization, and they said that I couldn't actually come because the women there, they considered it a very safe space where they could talk about all kinds of things, and they thought that the whole vibe would be taken, not be able to be had because I was there and because of my gender.
Right.
And they said I could go to the prostate cancer group, and I was like, well, other than the fact that I have a prostate, like, that has nothing to do with me. Like, and I have cancer, but like, it has nothing. Like, These guys, prostate cancer, they don't have these same feelings of I don't belong here because every guy in there is a guy. Like they don't have that added layer. And so it is pervasive throughout everything that you do, right? You're going to bump into the pink world, the pink wall, this thing that you just have to overcome. And like I said, I'd rather be in this world, right? I'd rather be in the pink world and know where I stand than, I talk to people, I'm like, have you ever heard of appendix cancer? Because I never have. I'd never heard of appendix cancer, right? But the same number of guys that get appendix cancer or the same number of people that get appendix cancer are the same number of people that are going to get male breast cancer, right? It's like 2,800 people a year. So I would rather be in the male breast cancer space, right? Emphasis on breast, because then I get to be a part of that world and be taken in there rather than me going, hey, I got appendix cancer, and people going, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I didn't even know that, so I'd rather be there. That's just certainly my opinion, but I've also tried to make sure that I'm not talking to just my male breast cancer audience, right? That would be a very, very, very small audience. On social and everything else, I'm talking more to the breast cancer audience and then the cancer audience, right? Because so many people come to me and they're like, oh, the women that are in the colorectal space, right? If that's 95 to 5%, only 5% of colorectal are women, right? So they're like, oh my gosh, you are talking the same language that I talk. I mean, we may be talking about different cancers, but you are saying the same things about isolation, about not feeling a part of the crowd, all those things. So I'm finding this secondary audience of rare cancers that are all like, oh my gosh, somebody's finally talking on our behalf, right? Great. Somebody's saying the things that need to be said.
And I like what you said there, because I think of it almost like as a recovery group. If I'm in AA, I want to speak to other alcoholics that know exactly how hard it is to put that drink down, the psychosis to get that next fix. Now, the cocaine addict or heroin addict, yeah, we have this similar bondage. We're not speaking the same language.
We're not. It's very similar. Addiction in that metaphor, right? Addiction is the cancer, right? But it's not the same addiction. Not the same cancer.
So you're in September of 23, the diagnosis, the peak fear is come upon you. You know nothing at this point. I'm an outcast and I could die. And I've now been feminized somewhat in my own mind.
Feminized completely in my own mind. Yeah, 100%. Yep.
That's where you put yourself immediately as, oh my goodness, here I am, a Marine, a man, I've got a wife, and I've got this girl cancer that it's like, wow. So it's such a double punch. You're going to die, and you're going to die in this very unusual way, something that only kills women.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's a hard thing to go through.
Yeah, exactly. Because you got to get your mind right. Okay. So just kind of play that out. You've got the cancer, you've got the diagnoses, the nurse is concerned for you. Pick it up from there. How long did it take you to get out of that funk of the double? Okay, I just want to live. I don't care what kind of cancer I have. How did that process work out after September?
I would say it took me about 6 months. And during that time, I was mostly in chemo, right? For 4.5 of those months, I was in chemo, right? And that's just a hard time, right? You're just continually going downhill for the whole time that you're in it, right? Chemo is just incredibly hard.
Right.
But like I said before, I had spent my entire life and career communicating, right? As a DJ, as a spokesperson, as a media relations, and all of these things is what I'd done. And I'd been doing social media professionally for 20 years, right? I think most people, like, they picked up Facebook in 2007, 2008, and they just started doing it. I was doing it professionally for clients back then. And so I have 20 years of understanding social media, understanding communications, understanding how to change a narrative, understanding all messaging, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I started my channels, the guy with stage 4 breast cancer, on Instagram and TikTok. I started them primarily just sort of documenting my journey, right? And that's the same thing that I think thousands, if not millions of people are doing with their cancer journeys on their, they're putting it out there and they're trying to show somebody, hey, this is my journey. Hopefully yours will be a little bit better, or hopefully you can learn something from mine, or hopefully, that was sort of how I started. Maybe I can make other people starting their journey feel a little bit less afraid.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I wanted to go. And as I started, people were like, wait, you have breast cancer? And I, me being a marketer and understanding my audience and understanding where those questions are coming from, like, well, I can turn this into something a little bit more powerful. I can yes, I can document my own journey, right? My own tribulations with chemo, right? We're getting ready for surgery. I'm getting a mastectomy, all the things but I can also educate from a male breast cancer perspective, right? That I can throw some other things into my social that are more advocate and educational rather than just my own personal story. Right. So I start sprinkling these things in, and they start taking hold, right? And I'm not, I like I said, I've been doing this for a while, but I've started some social accounts for clients that don't go anywhere and some that take off and go really viral. But this one, it just started catching people's attention, right? I think because, I'm a unicorn out there, right? Right. I'm a guy with breast cancer. B, I'm a guy with breast cancer that's willing to talk about it on camera, right? That's a different thing, right?
Yes.
I'll go into this quick sidebar and then I'll finish that because I think this is important. A guy reached out to me about 3 weeks ago. Again, my combined audience on social right now is about 50,000 people. And I am very well aware that 50,000 people is not an influencer, only because I've worked in social media for a long time. But 50,000 people in the cancer world, especially 50,000 people in the male breast cancer world, is a big deal.
Yes.
So I make sure that any guy that reaches out to me, hey, I found a lump, hey, I'm in the middle of treatment, I make sure that I DM and respond to those guys because they need it. There's no other support out there for them. I don't have the time to sort of get to everybody that's DMing me now, but I get back to them. A guy wrote me about 3 weeks ago, and he said, I had stage 2 breast cancer, and I've been in remission for 12 years. And other than my 2 children, my wife, and my mother, nobody else in the world knew that I had breast cancer because I was too ashamed to say that I had breast cancer.
Yep.
People knew that I had cancer, but nobody's going to ask, oh, what, he goes, people knew that I had cancer. People knew I was going through treatment. People knew that but he goes, now I'm 12 years out. Nobody really thinks about it anymore. But I just changed my profile status to breast cancer survivor.
Nice.
And I did that because I've been watching you for 2 years, and I finally felt brave enough to go and do it. Okay. And that's what I want. I want guys to feel like they can tell their story and not feel like they're going to get ridiculed. Like they're not going to feel like this is something. So as I was going through that process and trying to figure out how I was going to present myself on social, which is still evolving to this day, right? I'm still tinkering with my on-air messaging and all those things. I decided that my best place to be would to be, okay, nobody else is sort of picking up this mantle, right? Nobody else is talking about this at a national level. Nobody else is doing this. I have this vast amount of experience in branding and messaging and all these things. And I have a platform to be able to do it. And I have a personality to be able to do that as well. So let's just see how this goes.
Yeah.
And that's when it was March of 25 when I eventually sold my agency because I had the nonprofit marketing agency, right? We were the largest in New England. But during my entire time of having cancer, I owned the company, right? I would go for chemo in the morning, and then I'd come home and do 5 or 6 client calls in the afternoon, and then write a social calendar, and then draft a press release, and all the things that needed to happen. And after 2 years, and more importantly, after 2 years, and then realizing that I wasn't going to get any better, right? We were all operating under stage 2 or stage 3 during that time. That okay, if I just do my time in the chair, if I, I'm just okay, then this will be behind me. Once I was diagnosed with stage 4, I was like, well, working full time in this capacity is really difficult. So I sold my agency. And that's when I really launched into the online brands, right? The guy with stage 4 breast cancer.
Right.
And they've continued to grow. I mean, 92% of my audience are women age 45 to 54, because that's the core audience of breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, there's a lot of people there that find me that are just like, oh, okay, this guy's talking in a different way about this, or he's funny, or he's vulnerable. Like, there are times when I'm on there and I'm like, today's a hard day, guys, and I'm sobbing, but I'm going to put that out there, because at the end of the day, you have to know that this is all real. I mean, my wife and I talk about this all the time. I'm like, hey, should I post this? Because she goes, yes, post it, because people, and those are the ones, we went to a family trip a little while ago. And we went to the Bell Center in Montreal. We're big Montreal Canadiens fans. We went up to the Montreal. And the last time we were there was 5 years ago with my son and my wife and me. And during this time, all of this has happened, right? And so I'm sitting there in the Bell Center, and they're about ready to sing the national anthem. And I'm just shooting, I have my phone up, and I'm just shooting the family, and I'm coming back to me. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm asking myself, it took me 5 years to get back here, right? And it was really difficult. Is this the last time that I'll ever be in this building with my family again, right? You have those thoughts, right? When you're stage 4, right?
Yeah.
The average lifespan of a stage 4 cancer patient is 18 to 24 months, and I'm on month 30, right?
Mm.
And so when you're in those sort of one of a kind situations, when I'm back in the Bell Center, sitting there with my family, is this the last time I'm going to be here, right? And so I also learned that when I'm having these moments, they're valuable for content, right? I'm not trying to make myself cry. I'm not trying to make myself, but if these things happen, it's valuable for the audience to see that it's a real moment. So I put this real moment out there about my son consoling me. He saw me when I was turning the camera around, but he saw that I was upset.
Yeah.
And he he's 16. He gets it. He gets it, certainly, to a point. I mean, I was diagnosed on day 3 of high school for him, and he's lived his entire high school career. He's now ending his junior year. His entire high school career has been with this. And so, he's incredibly resilient. He leaned in on me and just said it was going to be okay. And yeah, I mean, we are planning on going back to the Bell Center next year. And so, but those moments, they come. And so we've decided, we just had a cancer news yesterday from my oncologist, which we've been waiting for 4 months. And it was a mix of good and bad, but we set up the camera in the corner and we recorded the moment with my wife, which is a very private, intimate moment to my wife and I and the oncologist. But we recorded it, and I chop it up, and I put out the parts that I want to put out, and I put out the parts that I don't. I take out the parts that I don't want to put out. But those moments of reality, true reality, not reality TV, true reality, true human bonding, that's all really important. And so that's been a cornerstone to what I've tried to do on social, which is the ultra real, but also the ultra informative, right? And I also consider myself to have a good sense of humor. So there's a lot of, idiocy mixed into it and trying to make people laugh and that kind of a thing, because it can't just be the doom and gloom of cancer. It can't be. Nope. Because what are we doing if that's all it is, right? Last night, my grandson wanted to go outside and look at the sunset because it was a pretty one. And I was like, yes, of course. And so we went out and we did a 10-second TikTok out there of him just one. And it had nothing to do with cancer. But I'm like, but these are important, right? Because these moments matter even probably more now. And my TikTok, I say this all the time, my TikTok, yes, is a massive tool for the male breast cancer industry to use, that is going to be around forever. Long after I'm gone, people will be able to find it and walk through it and see what's out there. But it is also a repository for my family, that they will never have to question if I love them. My grandkids have seen themselves on my TikTok for years, and they've seen how I've integrated cancer into their lives, but not overwhelmingly, right? That it's just something that we're all going through, right? Max, you got a broken arm. That sucks. That Pep's got, stage 4 breast cancer, but we're all going to move on and be okay.
what you're describing, the attraction, it's the greatest human attraction, authenticity. People can't get enough of it. They're craving it. So the good, the bad, the ugly came from right here. It wasn't to trick you. This is me. I'm in this most humble, vulnerable state, and here it is. And people love that stuff. You talk about your family. That's kind of where my heart gets pulled. Describe the impact on your son. You have one son or your child, and then your wife. You know, here's dad, the rock, the Marine, the go-getter, the fighter. And he's now taking, I don't care what kind of cancer, just describe kind of how they, now dad needs us. Now tell us about that experience.
My family has been incredibly supportive, and I overemphasize probably that part of in my story, right? That I understand that most people do not have the support network that I do. And that's one of the reasons I'm able to do what I do, right? Mm-hmm. So I have my wife, who is certainly, when I was going through my 21, 22, the weight loss, the making sure I was the best, she was undergoing the same thing at the same time. And we didn't really realize it at the same time. So we both come out of it the strongest partners that we could possibly be. Mm. And then we go into this where her role changes, right? Her role is now caregiver. I mean, that's a hard transition. She's 47 years old. She shouldn't be caregiving for her husband, right? That's not something that you expect. Our son, Jack, is 16 years old. He's a junior in high school, and man, he's just a light in this world, right? We've always told, we have 4 kids. He's the last one at home.
Yeah.
But we have always told the kids, you have to be involved in something. And he found performing arts and dance and theater, and he's so good. But all those performances he does in a year, whether it be singing, whether it be theater, whatever it is, those help me so much. Yeah. Seeing him advance, seeing him. So, he has done really well. I have a daughter, Abby, and when I first got sick, her and her husband and the 3 grandkids were living in Texas. That's where she grew up. And we decided that we have a huge house here in the Berkshires in Western Mass. And we decided, hey, it would be great for you guys to be around this for all of us. So we live in this multi-generational home. There's 8 of us that live here. My wife and my son. My wife and I live on the main floor. My son lives in the finished basement, and then the 5 of them live in the upstairs.
I love that.
And we all share. It's amazing. So I get to not only be everyday Pepe, right, everyday grandfather, but they get to help me in ways that they don't even know, right? Yeah. Just a simple hug in the morning when I'm having a rough morning, but that kid happens to be in my kitchen, right? Where I don't think a lot of grandparents have that, right? So it's really an amazing. And so then when you go out from that support structure, which is an amazing, and just that alone is amazing, but we have 2 sets of incredibly best friends. My wife's best friend happens to be married to my best friend, and they are incredibly supportive of all of this. And then we have another best friends from college, and then my parents, and that's sort of that next ring out, right? And then you go out to friends, high school and colleagues and that. But then you go out to the community, the social media community. Look, I get it. Social media is a cesspool of a lot of things, right? There's a lot of bad stuff on social media. I get it. And I've worked in it. I see it.
Yes.
What I can tell you, the cancer communities on social media, I guess understanding that we're all isolated in some way. The cancer communities on social media, and it doesn't matter which one, even like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, they're amazing. And so when you go out to that next level, I know based on the feedback and comments, I had a young mom from Mississippi write me this morning. I shared it with my wife. I'm like, this is exactly why I'm doing this. And she wrote me saying, I found your page this morning. I was diagnosed 6 months ago. I've been laying in bed all morning crying because I don't know what to do with myself. And I found your page, and I just watched about 60 videos. And she did, because she went back and she liked. I was like, who's this person liking all these videos from, a year ago? She was watching all these videos from a while ago. And I was like, and she's like, and you made it so I could get out of bed. And I wrote her back and I said, first of all, I really want to thank you because this is the reason I do this. I don't get paid for any of these things. It's not like I'm, rolling in money as an influencer here. I said, this is the reason I do this. And I said, second of all, I didn't get you out of bed. I said, I was just a tool that you use to get yourself out of bed. I was just one small piece of something that made you feel better enough to get up and get out of bed. And you can pin that on me, and that's great. But you have this within yourself to be okay. And you have this within yourself to shine this light, and you're going to be okay. And so, she wrote me back and she was, I'm in tears and thank you so much. But those kinds of communications come, several a week, right? I get these moments where, I'm sitting there, I'm recording another TikTok, right? And I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like, why am I just sitting here, And I get these messages from that guy that decided to put it on his Facebook profile after 12 years, from this woman, this mom in Mississippi. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the reason I'm doing it. To make people feel less afraid, to make people feel like there's hope. All of those things are incredibly important. Having a positive attitude in this, even on the hardest days, is incredibly important. I've been told by people with MDs next to their name that, look, your attitude throughout this process is going to directly impact how long you live. Like, that is a very
100%.
Right. Very straightforward, right? Like, if you go down all the rabbit holes, you're going to die earlier than you would. And that's a pretty crazy thing to think about. But, it's true. And if I can have a small part in helping somebody, buck up, pull up your, shoelace, whatever metaphor you want to do. It's not me doing it. It's me being a tool that you're using to help yourself. And that's what I want, is just people to feel like they can do it on their own.
God is working through people, and he's going to use people in all various walks of life. What you're providing is invaluable encouragement and hope. You take those out of the fight of your lifetime, you will not make it out. You must have that. One of the greatest gifts we can give to another person, whether they're high as a mountain or as low as dirt, is encouragement. We see you, we are with you, we are walking this out with you. So yeah, I spent 20 hours on one video, but you reached one heart that was dead and now has a chance to come back out. That's why you do it. That's why it's all worth it. Our guest is Jake Messier. The guy with stage 4 breast cancer is the website and the socials. So you're in March of 2025. March of 2025 is now where they say, this is stage 4, sir. And now it's a new level of care, a whole new, we crossed a line, pick it up from there. And then where we're at today. But stage 4 is now a different, I already had breast cancer. Now you're saying it's even worse? Go ahead.
Right. This is not going to be something that you survive, right? Those are hard conversations to have, both with yourself and with the people that you love, right? And me having that conversation with my son when he was 15 years old, that I'm hopeful to make it to his high school graduation. Like, that's a hard conversation to have as a father. It was even harder having that conversation with my parents, right? My parents are both in their early to mid 70s, right? And having that conversation where, look, guys, there's a very good chance that you're both going to outlive me. Like, that's not something that parents want to hear ever, right? It's not something as a parent I ever want to hear, right? But I also think having those conversations, being that communicative, being that transparent is very helpful, because now we can all talk about this very candidly. We can joke about it. We have very dark humor amongst ourselves about this, and we make death jokes and cancer jokes, but it's because we accepted that we can talk about the really hard things. My wife and I, when we were going through our things in 21 and 22, we had this saying that we say the hardest things out loud. Because if you can say the hardest things out loud, anything else is easier, right?
Absolutely.
So if you can say without uncertainty that I am going to die prematurely from this disease, and I have made my peace with that, that whatever days I have, and I hope that there's a lot of them, but whatever days I have, I'm going to be the best version of myself that I can be. And I fail at that every day, right?
Yep.
Even though I'm in this, I fail at being the best human being I can be every day. And you'd think that somebody with cancer or with, would, have all the answers or try it. Nope. I try to, again, these mind tricks that you do. And I try to make myself 3% better than I was yesterday. I have no idea how to quantify what that means, but it is, I wake up every morning trying to be 3% better than it's not a big wholesale change. I'm not trying to change my entire life tomorrow. I'm just trying to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. And like I said, most of the time I fail at that, at least under my own self-analysis, right? I look back and go, well, boy, I didn't really do that today. When I got through all of that, sort of the summer of 2025, which was funny because I get diagnosed stage 4, and then I go into what's called NED status, NED, which is no evidence of disease status. So the second I go stage 4, because stage 4 means that it has traveled outside of the region, right?
Yeah.
And so I have breast cancer, but the breast cancer is settled on my hip bone, on my femur, in the upper trochanter of my femur. Now, that's not bone cancer. That's not another kind of cancer. That is breast cancer that has spread, and that's what metastasis means. Metastatic means it's moved out of this region. It could be over here. It could be anywhere else. It's just out of the region that it started in. So I become metastatic, and then they go, well, we can't find any tumors. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And this is the thing. About 10 to 15% of people go into what's called NED status, no evidence of disease status. This is very different than remission. You're not cured. The scans and the technology at the time, they know that there is cancer zipping around my entire body, right? But there is not one particular tumor that they can go, there it is. So last summer, I was in this NED status. And I will tell you, it was the most normal I felt during this entire journey, right? You're not looking over your shoulder all the time. You're not, right. And it was funny. We went on a couple family vacations last year, and my wife and I, her name is Nicole, we got back from one of the vacations. I'm like, man, we fought an awful lot. Like, we just bickered an awful lot on that vacation. And she's like, you're right. And I'm like, she goes, that sort of sucked. I'm like, no. I said, one thing I realized during this whole journey is that when you're in this fight or flight moment, right? When you're in this constant state of crisis, you and your wife, I mean, it can go either way. This is the way it went for my wife and I. We didn't fight. We don't, she's my caregiver. She's wanting to make sure I'm taken care of. I'm trying to make sure I'm the best version of myself for her. All these things. We didn't fight. We're just trying to take care of each other. So when I go into this NED status for 6 months, we're bickering at each other like we used to. Nothing major, just minor. Yeah. But I was like, at the end of the vacation, I'm like, you know what? I'm actually happy that we bickered, because it was a little bit of normalcy, right? It was a little bit of, we're sort of back. And not that I want to be bickering with my wife,
right?
But it was the sentiment that I was, right? I could, and I was.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to October of this past year, they were like, so we get through the summer and we're bickering and we're having a normal summer, right? It's pretty great. We get to October and they're like, never mind. That spot's back. So you come out of NED, right? And that's a thing, right? When you are stage 4, you can come in and out of this NED status, right? You can be NED for a year, and then you're actively fighting tumors for a year. And then you can go back into NED. And then, so, I mean, there's this. So since October of 25, they were like, okay, this spot on your hip has reoccurred. So I had to go back into radiation, which when I am going in to get my biopsy on my hip, what they have to do, because it's not an easy thing to get a bone biopsy from your inner hip, right? They have to do a controlled fracture of my hip, which is not something that is, nice. But they basically they drill this thing down into my hip. They get in there and then they pull it out. But that leaves a hole that the needle had to go through, right? And so you can put no weight on your hips for 6 to 8 weeks. And so they were like, well, here's some crutches. And I'm like, have you seen my underarm from my mastectomy? I mean, it is all, I said, I can't be on crutches. And so, this has now happened twice where a hip biopsy lands me in a wheelchair for 8 weeks, which is a different mindset, right? And I get that people live in wheelchairs their entire life, but, I'm temporarily in one and all those things, but it is a different kind of mind F to go through that, right? When you're in that wheelchair, and then, the day you get out of the wheelchair, you're starting radiation, which isn't fun either. You go through radiation sickness and the poisoning and all those things. So you're just sitting in this wheelchair just to, end up someplace worse, right? With your mental health, So one of the things this was the second year I had gone through this. The first year, it was really hard, and I let myself go down the rabbit hole way too much. And I was in a really depressed state. It was really difficult. This year, I tried to remain really positive, and I used social media. I did a whole 10-day countdown of radiation and things that I'm grateful for and all these things. And the community and the use of social, I have to tell you, I mean, you're doing this. You're on this, I talk to podcasters all the time. I do 3 or 4 of these a week, and you seem like you've been doing something like this for a while. There's breaking of the fourth wall, right? There's when I look directly at the camera, right, and I start talking to someone, that's breaking that fourth wall. And what I've been a producer, I've been a cinematographer, I've been all these. I have a full IMDb page. I've done all of these things, right? And so what I see is, even though I have stage 4 breast cancer, right, I'm also producing my life, right? And so it allows this distance between me and this lens to produce this authentic. I'm producing like I would produce a documentary, like I've done a lot of times, right? I'm the subject, but I'm producing this thing. So most of the time, Jake has his content hat on and is producing this story about this stage 4 breast cancer guy. It just happens to be me, but I get to have this distance, at least, and I talk about it with my therapist all the time. At first I was like, listen, is this the best way for me to be doing this? And she goes, no, this is a great way for you to be coping with this, right? And you're helping other people along the way. So I get to break that fourth wall and have separation between me and my disease, between me and my mortality, if we're going to be frank, right? I have separation there. I'm just producing this TikTok channel for this guy that's going through this, right? And that was a really great moment that he said. I'm going to put that in there, and it allows me to help other people, but I will tell you that it helps me as well. Like I said, I just went into this big scan that was yesterday, and this past week, there's a thing called scanxiety, right? That all cancer patients know that when you're coming up on a scan, everything just goes haywire. Everything is difficult. Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? All the things come back when you're coming up for it. So scanxiety is a real big thing in the cancer world. And I've done several, scanxiety series and trying to figure out this. And this time I was like, well, I can go and either talk to myself on the phone again, like I do all the time, or I went out and I did something like this. I went and gathered 4 other cancer influencers like myself that are all women, that are all dealing with scans and scanxiety and breast cancer and all these things. And I put us all in a conversation and I recorded it so that we could hopefully not just get my perspective, but get 4 other people's perspective on how difficult this can be. And so I just posted it the other day. I launched my YouTube channel on Monday, just to have this conversation out there so that, again, going back to the original mission of helping people feel not afraid, we're still doing it today. I mean,
Yeah.
YouTube and the website and everything else is different than when we started off just on TikTok, right? But the mission of helping people feel less afraid on this journey, I mean, that's something that's going to vastly outlive me, right? That's the beauty of these channels, right? I could be gone in 6 months, or I could be gone in 6 years, or whatever. These channels of helping people, I'm not going to shut them down, right? They'll live on.
Yeah.
So that when somebody's going through scanxiety and they're having an episode and they, look up scanxiety on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, this series is going to pop up, right? And hopefully this helps them, right? And it doesn't matter if it's now or 5 years from now. That's where we're sort of going with this from now on.
Yeah, I love that. And if I got cancer diagnosis tomorrow, breast, foot, lung, I don't care where, I need the fellowship. I need to be in the fight with those that are doing it, not complaining and self-pity, but say, no, we're fighting on. We intend to beat this, and we'll talk to you down the road because you're going to beat it too. I love it. I love it. I love it. Tell us then where we're at today. You're still in the middle of your fight and
I am
pursuing. So tell us now currently where you're at and what still is to come on this journey.
Sure. So, like I said before, I think a lot of people don't understand. Stage 4 is metastatic. Stage 4 equals metastatic, but does not necessarily equal terminal, right? Yes, in the true term terminal, right? This will kill me, right? But I don't have a timeline. The doctors haven't said, "Oh, you've got 3 years to live," right? That we're not at that point, right? We're not anywhere. That's when it becomes sort of the terminal disease. You've got an endpoint that you're looking at.
Yes.
Not there.
Amen.
What I'm currently doing is I got my first scan after radiation in December, which came back. I'm breaking news. I mean, I know this will air a little bit later. It came back clean. My hip tumor is dead or dying, and it is shrinking and going away, which was amazing news, right? My wife and I, that was this moment that my wife and I shared on screen. It was beautiful. But it's funny because whoever is in a cancer journey will tell you that the journey is never linear, right? And it's funny, my wife, when she's very, very type A, she's a program manager for a big company, everything in column A has to equal column B, which is going to equal, and so when somebody gives her, this is the plan that we're going to do, 20 weeks of chemo, and then we're going to do a surgery, and then we're going to do 5 weeks of radiation, and then you're going to be better. She's like, great, I have a plan. I have a linear path. This is what we're doing.
Yes.
And week 3 of chemo, that plan starts, going all over the place, let alone the 2 additional surgeries, let alone the additional bout of radiation, let alone all the other things that I've gone through. So the path is never linear, right? The path is never going to be linear. So while we were celebrating the hip tumor being gone, that was my only spot of metastasis.
Okay.
So we're like, oh my gosh, we're back, we're back in NED. They were like, well, and then so then you have the and then part of your conversation, which is the, again, non-linear part. The and then part was there's a 5 millimeter spot on your aorta that we are watching because we don't know what it is and it could be cancerous. So we're not going to know this for I get scanned every 3 months. So literally this is, I just got over my scanxiety yesterday. They scheduled me for like July 18th.
Yep.
I have between yesterday and July 18th to worry about this because I'm not going to get any more information about this little nodule that's sitting on my aorta that may or may not be cancer, right?
Yeah.
But that's cancer teaches you patience. Cancer teaches you lots of things, right? So that's where I'm at. We are watching, we are waiting, but I that's where I'm at personally, right? When we talk about where I'm at as the guy with stage 4 breast cancer, right? That's more exciting, right? Because it just got announced the other day. I think they put out their press release the other day that the Susan G. Komen Foundation has asked me, and I've accepted to be on their metastatic breast cancer steering committee, which they have 12 people in the entire world that look at Komen and tell them where they're missing the mark on the metastatic community. It's a board, right? The biggest parts of this is that as far as I know, there has never been a male patient on a Susan G. Komen board, right? They've had doctors, they've had funders, they've had donors, they've had other people, but the breast cancer world at large has not accepted men as part of the journey. And so that is changing literally right now. Over the past couple of years, since I've started doing this, the major breast cancer organizations, whether that be Komen, whether that be the National Breast Cancer Foundation, the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, the big ones with the big research, they're now starting to pay attention to male breast cancer. And whether that be me or another guy out there, it doesn't matter. But that is literally starting right now. And so Komen, through their action, is sort of doing what I'm doing. I want to get to the point where I don't have to go, hey, I'm the guy with male breast cancer. Hey, I'm the guy with male breast cancer. Like that's, I mean, it's just repetitive and old. What I want to do is be sitting up at a breast cancer table, right? I want to be sitting at a forum that's just breast cancer. And just by the fact that I'm sitting there, you can deduce that I have breast, and I don't need to beat it over your head that I'm a guy with breast cancer, right? We've gotten over that fact. Now we're still in the middle of that, but that's where I want to be. I want to be sitting on the breast cancer board at the American Cancer Society, and this Komen thing was a huge first step. And I'm very, very thankful to them for allowing me onto the board. It was an interview process and everything else, but I'm very grateful for them for not only for me and what I can do for my networking, but for every single guy in this country, that there is now somebody they can point to and say, look, that I'm being represented on a national breast cancer board by somebody, right? They may not like me. They may not appreciate my politics. They may not like anything about me, but my gender is representing them at a breast cancer board. And that's a huge leap forward than the 70 years in the past.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just, there's still purpose and meaning, and we need you in this fight. And so you can't stop now. You're on the cusp of breakthrough, at least in the space. I love the journey. I love the story. I think it's a powerful movement. I think what you're doing, anything people do in boldness and courage, is to be commended. Okay. Facing stuff that should take you out and saying, not me. And we're going to do it under the psyche of bringing others along in that journey. Because if you're the only one that survives male breast cancer, it's great for you and your family, but they'll be suffering because they didn't have that same breakthrough. And so we're just continuing to pour into this mission. I love your story. Tell us all the places that folks can connect with you and support this work, get engaged.
Thank you. So on TikTok and Instagram, it's literally at the guy with stage 4 breast cancer. It's the guy with stage 4 breastcancer.com. And then, like I said, there's a new YouTube channel that's only one video on there, but we're going to be adding more and more to it as we go along. And I will put it out there, because if there are men out there that feel a lump, or, that's the thing that, I'm going to point you to that. There is over 2,000 breast cancer organizations in the country, right? Over 2,000. There's only 3 for men. It's the Male Breast Cancer Global Alliance, Male Breast Cancer Happens, and His Male Breast Cancer, right? If you look up those, the founder, those people are going to help you. These are, there's only 3 places in the country for you to go and find any real information about male breast cancer. Sure, Komen's got a page, and Breast Cancer Foundation has a page, and I get it. But Male Breast Cancer Global Alliance and Male Breast Cancer Happens specifically are out there doing what I'm doing on a very grassroots level, just trying to bringing guys. So that's where I can encourage. If you're a guy out there that you just don't know where to go, start with those 2 organizations. That's the best place to go.
Thank you so much for that, Jake. God bless your story, your fight. I want to continue it. I know we'll be following it. Our show will have these links going. We'll get connected with your channels. And I just love what you're doing. I love the psyche and the mentality around something that is going to take most people out. But there's a different way. It is hope and it's encouragement, and you're doing that. So God bless you, folks. And do this until next time. Serve the Lord Jesus Christ. Tell a friend about him. Stay good. God bless everybody.
The Matthew Dark Show, your one-stop show for truth, courage, fellowship, and faith. Available everywhere you get your podcasts.